And today's one of the managers classes. Today we're going to be going over reviewing the Gnome Games mission and then getting into depth in the values that we have in the company. What we need to talk about this from a management level, and it doesn't matter if you're working for Gnome Games or Verizon or McDonald's or the Milwaukee Brewers or wherever. Each business has got the way they do stuff. What they're going to do is their mission, and how they do it is part of their mission, but then their values define how things operate both internally and externally in the business. And with Gnome Games, we've got 20 years plus of history to rely on. Our values have evolved over time, and they'll continue to evolve as things change. Initially, we were formed as a role-playing company. We didn't know anything about CCGs or competitive play. Now it's an important part of what we do. We didn't know about hosting conventions, really. Now we host them. School game nights were nothing on the radar. So, John Luke, have you ever worked with a company that's shared its mission and values with you before, or have you talked about that?
I don't believe it's something that was explicitly stated at my previous job, no.
Okay. One of the reasons why it's so important to us at Gnome Games and a lot of companies is when we all understand what the values of our company or our family or the community that we're in, and we all operate underneath those same principles, we can get a lot more done effectively. We can communicate on the same level, and there's this expectation that we're going to operate inside those guidelines. And that's extremely important to our success as a company. And it also is a little bit of indoctrination into how we think. You know, when we think about things like spirit of the game and everybody being welcome at our tables, that might be a little bit different for one person than it is for another. So we want to clarify that. So first thing is the mission. We kind of talked about this earlier in the class, but our mission is to enrich the lives and strengthen communities by providing memorable, socially responsible, value-added, family-friendly play experiences. We want to bring people to the table and get them to play. And then we're going to offer welcoming spaces no matter where we're at, whether it's at a convention, at a school game night, in our stores, to where people can connect and discover what we're doing with tabletop gaming. And then we're going to, as you know, what the gasoline that allows us to do things is we're going to provide and curate the best games for families to enjoy wherever they go. So they want to come to us and buy stuff. We're also committed to respectful play, fostering positive community impact, and continually striving to improve and grow. All three of those components work together to make Gnome Games a better company today than it was yesterday. And if we follow that, we'll be better tomorrow than we are today. And that's real important for us. We've got to continually improve. Otherwise, we'll be left in 1999, and that's not a good place to be. So any questions about our mission? And you've been here for a while, so it's pretty straightforward. But it is a different mindset than a lot of other game stores are. So it's rather unique, I believe, in how we do that. Jocelyn, do you have anything on it?
No.
Okay. With our core values, these are a number of things that we use to define how we do business and why we do the things we do the way we do them. One of them is a relatively new value that I've added to us, but this is spielanthropy. You've heard of philanthropy?
Yep.
What is philanthropy, sir?
Oh, the definition eludes me at the moment, but I've heard the term.
Well, what do you think it means? Gut feeling. You're not Merriam-Webster. You know, what gut feeling? What's philanthropy?
The immediate thought I get with philanthropy is generosity, very showy, and almost catering to the people.
Okay. The underlying thing with philanthropy is people are giving their resources, their time, the value that they've amassed from wherever they amassed it back to the community to improve the social welfare of the community. Well, the big value that Gnome Games has and what we have is it's cool to be able to give, to be the Microsoft dude and give away $1 million here, $1 million there. but we don't have those assets. And in looking at what we do, we can have a much better and bigger impact if we use the games, the resources, and the big thing is memorable play experiences to responsibly put games in the right places and create opportunities and memories that benefit and improve the well-being of the families, the people, and the communities that we live in. That's the power of what we do, and that's underlying at the end of the day. If we're doing it responsibly, which means that we're paying our staff, we're profitable as a company, because if we aren't profitable, we're not responsible. And if we're doing it well, then we've done some good things. And that's a value that we want to judge everything that we do and how we interact with the community, the people we do business with, the groups that we decide to help and decide not to help. I mean, saying no is part of being a responsible philanthropist. And so that's a value that when we look at what we're doing, how we're doing it, we want to examine using that viewpoint. Jocelyn, do you have anything to add to that?
No, not at the moment. Sorry, I'm very tired today.
I understand. Okay. The second value that we have, and this has been since day one, even before then, everybody's welcome at our tables. All are welcome at the Gnome Games tables. Now, this does not mean that we allow an asshat to sit at the table. Rather than that, that means that we make it so that everybody feels welcome at our table. We're dedicated to fostering and maintaining a safe, inclusive play and workspace for everybody. Being welcome at our table doesn't mean that our staff is going to take bullying, badgering, or bad behavior from a customer. Quite the opposite is true. We want to make sure that our staff are welcome when they work for us, both internally and with their external interactions with the customers. We're going to be a positive influence for both our customers and staff. So, it goes to a little bit of lead by example, and we say what we're going to do, we do what we're going to, or we do what we're going to say, and we say what we're going to do, and communicating that as effectively as possible. It also goes into being mom friendly, and this is something that's extremely important for us. If we have somebody dropping the F-bomb all over, whether it's during the day when there's nobody around or when there's Pokemon, it's inappropriate. We need to address it. We want to make sure that our environment is welcoming and supportive for all ages and all backgrounds all the time. That doesn't mean that we can't play Vampire. It doesn't mean that we're going to not play some of the games. It means that we're going to pick an appropriate setting, and some things we're going to say no to. We will probably never run some of the adult-oriented role-playing games, and they won't get space on our shelves. We've for that same decision, we don't choose not to carry tarot cards.
For example, we for a couple of years in the free RPG Day kit, there was an 18+ sample that came through from a Lamentations of the Flame Princess, it was called. Yeah, that's the series. And we as a store made the decision that we were just going to pull it. It was not going to be available from us for free RPG Day. And actually a number of stores made that decision. It was a big complaint lodged against the company that managed free RPG Day, but we had a few people come in that I'd never seen before who wanted it, and I went, we don't have it.
Yep. And we're not
anybody else who was happy to be there.
Right. And we aren't going to do the under the table thing. Well, we don't have it, but here, ha, ha, ha. That's not how we do it. Our value is that we say it's not going to be here. It's not going to be here. Okay. Along with that, drug use in the workplace. It's not that I don't care what people do at home, but I really don't care as long as they're fit and able to work. But any indication of drug use on the job or by a customer in the store, out the door you go. That's just where it is, and that's what we look at like as well.
Alcohol drinking in the store too. And
yep, exactly. We're totally committed to maintaining a friendly, respectful atmosphere where everybody feels comfortable and connect through the joy gaming. On the same side, if we have somebody that is openly lobbying for a social cause, that might be a great social cause. but it's getting somebody else uncomfortable that's playing Pokemon, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, or role playing. We need to have that hard conversation that says, Joe, I know that you're in love with the Gophers Anonymous, and that's the best thing in the world. But right now, that's politics. It's a hot topic because Gophers are a hot topic right now. We don't need that at our tables, and we need to have that hard conversation with our staff or with the customer if it does come up. Anything else on there, Jocelyn? I think we got that pretty good, though.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons too, like with our return policy, when you're a manager and you train your staff to communicate it during the holidays, and you have those few times where you have to hold the line, has actually caused our customers in general to be better behaved over the years.
Right. Very much so.
Because they know that in Gnome Games, we finish that phrase, the customer is always right, in matters of taste. You can build the crappiest blue, red, whatever board wipe deck out there, and I will help you do that, but you do not get to push me or my staff around.
No.
And because we've held that line, it's actually improved the quality of our customers.
And developing quality customers is critical to our long-term success. It goes into the education of the customers in the community we work with. So many stores out and about have the customer that we really don't want. They're really not a customer because of how they act and the fact that they drive other customers away, and we don't want that.
I actually just have an example for that. Marcellus stopped by at West yesterday when I was there, and he helps a shop that we've worked with before, and they had some guys come in really pestering to run one of the card games, Shadowverse Evolve. And they said, we'll carry some of it. We expect you to buy this. And at first they were really good about it, and they wanted to have some events, and they're like, we have Tuesdays for you. And they're like, we don't want Tuesdays, we want Saturday. And they said, and the shop came back and said, we cannot do Saturday unless you can guarantee that you will have at least 8 people for these events, And they're like, well, you should just run it because we shop here. Well, they weren't buying anymore, but they were demanding. So basically, the shop went, no.
And business sense wise, and that's where we have to look at it carefully. Business sense wise, that makes a lot of sense because it's a marginal property. The customers who are being vocal and rude about it aren't going to be customers, and the potential for damage to your existing customer base is significant. And in that case, that's the decision that probably should have been made, and it would have been made this very similarly with us. Okay. One of the things that we have to make sure of is when you as a manager are making decisions like that, you need to inform HQ about these things, though, so that it's especially vital because we have multiple locations. So if we have Joe Snuffy going to Green Bay East and saying, hey, I want to run Shadowverse, and they give him that, and then they go and talk to West, and then they come to Appleton, we need that information shared between the stores, because that way as a headquarters we can put out and mitigate some problems. We also can see opportunities. If you've got one group that says, hey, I'd like to play Shadowverse, in a totally different group in Appleton, then we might have something potentially that we can communicate. And then we would still say, hey, if Tuesday night's our best night, we're going to try it on Tuesday night.
For example, of a group that understands the assignment, the My Little Pony card game never had a very big following for play. But we still ran their pre-releases and their big events until there were no more, because the group was fine with pretty much any day we picked. And they purposely came in and on average spent $50 to $100 per person in the store, because they told me they wanted to let the stores know that still ran their events. They appreciated them. And the best way they could do that was by purchasing product in the store. So they would walk in, and it wasn't for their game. They would come in and they would buy board games and gifts and dice and role-playing books. but they would purposely wait till they could go to a store that supported their game because they understood that that store needed to see that the players of that game supported the store as well.
And that extends through a lot of different areas. There are countless times when I will have somebody say, hey, can you get this game? I know I can get it cheaper on Amazon or I can get it cheaper here, but I want to get it to you because you guys do this. And they'll a lot of the things are things that we just do normally because of our mission and our values. And those type of things are immeasurably valuable to us. But would never see that if we don't follow our value set.
The scout group that we were at just emailed today asking if they can buy a list of games.
Yep, those are huge. So those are important. Along with that, we have our shared legacies. And this is one that as a company, we didn't even know was a potential 10 years ago. We use the power of play in the things that we do to tell stories. It's all about telling stories, having fun. Whether you remember you were growing up as a kid, you were playing at your grandma's house. A lot of times you won't remember the game, but you remember playing with your grandma. Well, it's like that with Gnome Games. We craft memorable experiences and use storytelling to share the Gnome Games message. Part of it is through our social media presence. Part of it is through our advertising. Part of it's through our marketing program. But the big thing is where we take the time to listen and share and help families tell their stories. And social group gamers that get together, it goes out to our conventions. We have a 20-year history with Daishokan, and that's evolved into another convention. Every time we go, we have people coming, I remember this when we did this 10 years ago. I remember this. And it becomes part of that culture of those groups or those families. And we're not just selling the games. We're fostering that creation of those shared experiences, the stories that come with them. And because of that, we become top of mind, top of brand, and also we're seen as a vital member of those communities. And that's extremely huge for us. It's probably the most fulfilling part of my job is watching those stories develop. And you have to be here for a while to see them. You'll hear those old codger stories about how, we ran kotais and all sorts of cool things. But the longer we do this, the more we do it, the more stories we tell. And we're writing new stories every day. And so understanding the power of the shared legacy value is extremely important to our future and our success as a company. Got anything, Joss? Mm-hmm. Okay. One that's another value that we have is spirit of the game. And initially we took it and stole this boldface from Pokemon. If somebody makes it first of all, everything's a game that we offer, and games are meant to be fun. If somebody does something that's not fun, then it's our job as a business, as the people running the event, as the facilitator, to figure out what's not fun and correct it, remove it, so it's fun for everybody. But along with that, we have to look at that with everything we do. It's not just those tournaments. It's the casual play. It's how we present things in the community. It's working with other game stores in the community. Today I happened to have a conversation with a game store owner that used to be an extremely good customer of ours, and he does a great job with Yu-Gi-Oh! And he's now doing Gundam. And because of the fairness and things, we have the ability to work with them and raise the bar across the community. That's extremely powerful for us. But it's our shared responsibility to protect that. And it's part of why sometimes we say, hey, you can only have one Pokemon, because we want to share that. We want to let more people have fun. And we have to be firm with that and be proactive. Those two terms are, we have to be able to say, no, you can't do that. And that's tough, especially when we're doing it internally. There are times when Jocelyn will say, Pat, no, you shouldn't be doing this. Now, I ultimately have that decision. I can say, Jocelyn, no, this time I'm going to do it. I usually don't, because Jocelyn's got a good head on her shoulders, but I need our managers especially to understand that internal spirit of the game as well. And where everybody's contributing to a positive and welcoming gaming experience, and encouraging and enforcing good sportsmanship. And it also goes down to the level of respect. It's there's just so much encompassed there, but by prioritizing community and fun, we can create that better gaming, shopping, and life experience for everybody in the community. Any questions about that one? That's one that if we've got a staff member, or a manager, or even a senior member of the leadership that's violating that spirit of the game, that's what I call a bench talk. We have to have a sit down and fix it. And when that occurs, because it will occur, we do expect managers to step in and also, again, keep management involved. Let us know something's going on. Okay. One of the things that's easy to get out of touch with the spirit of the game are promo items. We get all this cool stuff from companies like Pokemon and Bandai and Wizards of the Coast. And it can be real addictive to be, hey, here's a promo, because that makes me feel cool, right? Well, occasionally we'll have staff members take that beyond what our scope is and use that as a self-ego inflation tool and put themselves in a position of power by the manipulation of the promos. That is a clear violation of the spirit of the game. It's not fun for the company. It's not fun for the people that aren't getting those promos that should be getting them, and we need to stop that.
It's a fine line for managers to walk with promos, because you can have a little more flexibility for, that really sweet kid who came in and it's, their birthday and they just, want 2 Pokemon packs to go and get like a poster out of the back or something. But then again, if you get a snot of a kid, you're not going to do it. And that's a fine line to walk with that. But it's something that we need to be aware of.
Right. And that comes with maturity as a manager and as a human. There's no script that makes it perfect. It is a judgment call. When you have those situations, please reach out to us and say, this is what I did. This is why I did it. Jocelyn and I are never going to come down on you unless you've made the same mistake 3 times. But we're never going to come down on a manager that made a decision that can explain to us why they made that decision. We may and will get into this is why it was not a correct decision in this situation. And these are the things that you may not have considered. And this is what we would have done and why we would have done it this way. That's where we come into the decision-making process.
For example, my worst promo person was the Belisara lady.
Oh, gosh.
Belisara was this horsey card game, collect fancy horses that you could play online. It was barely a card game. It was like glorified war. And this lady's kids got into it, and they used to be pretty generous with the promos. So we did some stuff with promos, but she thought she became entitled to promos because we were giving them out with purchase and stuff like that, to the point that she would try to demand that staff members open the drawer that promos were kept in so she could look and see.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that created an anxious environment for staff members, because staff knew that she was going to berate them and she was going to be mean to them. So sometimes they would give promos just to make her go away.
Right.
That just fed it. So literally at one point, I removed all the Belisara promos from the drawer, and they were stored elsewhere. And I was in, and I opened it up and I said, the game's been discontinued. There are no more promos. Well, are you sure? Look for yourself. And I shut the door. And directed all the staff that there are no more Belisara promos going out. We offloaded them to some schools, I believe.
Yeah. No, and it just was not good for us.
Yeah, but that was where staff started feeling obligated to devote promos, because there wasn't a good structure in place on how to do it, and it created a bad customer.
Yep. That leads right down into the value of being professional. Gnome Games is known worldwide as being one of the most professional game stores on the planet. And It defines how we act and play both within our store and beyond. It goes to events. It goes to our presence at trade shows. It goes to our presence at schools, how we dress in the stores, the way our stores look, everything. And we're accountable for our actions. We're trustworthy. If we say we're going to take, this is one of the things that I just went through with a distributor. We put in an order. We say we're going to take 25 cases of a product. We take 25 cases of a product. We've never not taken product that we have actually ordered ever in 20 years. Yeah, sometimes we get stuck with things like Redikai. But, huh? Breaky, I wish I had cases of Breaky right now, but yeah. But we strive to provide value in all of our dealings. Everything that we do, whether it's through expert advice, exceptional service, fostering a positive community, everything that we do, our interactions with other retailers around the world, it's really important that we understand that as professionals, we represent Gnome Games wherever we go and have that standard of conduct that reflects our commitment to professionalism and reinforces the trust the community has in us. It's a pain, but it's also kind of gratifying if I'm at festival and I've got a Gnome Games shirt on. Hey, it's the Pokemon guy, or hey, can thank you for doing this kind of thing. It's really, really cool, and it tells us that we're doing the right things. It's not so cool when we're at Target in red shirts and everybody asks us, where the women's lingerie section is, but that level of professionalism is extremely important, and it includes how we play games, ensuring fair play, respect for all the participants, reflecting the same values we uphold in our business practices at our tables and at the events we run. And it's kind of funny when we look into retrospect. When I was rewriting this one on the professionalism, I was reminded by Paula about the first time Gamma asked us to present a long time ago. One of the things that I got up in front of a whole room of retailers, I looked around there, and at that point in time, there was maybe 2 other retailers in this room of 300-400 retailers that had uniforms, and we had the uniforms. And I openly said, hey guys, we look professional. That's why we're getting the school contracts. That's why we're doing this thing. And a gentleman by the name of Paul Butler, sitting in the front shirt with more tattoos and everything, more piercings. You know who Paul Butler is, don't you, Jocelyn?
Yes.
He's one of the best retailers on the East Coast. And Paul looked at me, and when I sat down, he turned around. He said, "I'll never have a uniform." And now Paul owns a very nice store in Baltimore, and guess what Paul has? Uniforms. And when they ordered their first uniform shirts, he messaged me. He said, "Yeah, you were right. We should have had uniform shirts when we started, but I still don't like, we at that point in time we had a no piercings in policy. We don't have that anymore. Culture has changed, but we want to have that professional demeanor, presence, and attitude all the time." Josh, you got anything? Okay.
No, but I will say for me, it's the difference of being able to walk into a booth and be treated like I'm belong there, and being able to walk into a booth at a trade show and be asked where, my brother or my dad is.
Yep. Yeah, the industry is very discriminatory that way. That's not a good thing. And by us being professional, we raise that bar just a little bit, very slowly. There's not a quick fix on that, I don't think. So along with professionalism is our knowledge. Nobody knows games like the Gnomes know games. That doesn't mean that we know everything about every game. That is impossible. But we're committed to our expertise and continuous growth and improvement. We want to continue to grow things. And not only with the game industry stuff, but professionally as business people, as managers, as buyers, as people that run events. We want to always continually improve. And we're going to try and be the best that we possibly can be. And when we don't try to do that, we stagnate. And that's the worst thing. You know, I could be stuck on running the old Neopets and the old Star Trek card game or L5R, and that's all we talked about, or be stuck in running old D&D. Still a fun system, but that's not what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the newest stuff, and we're going to have that knowledge for our customers. Along with that, we want to be able to share that knowledge and be able to communicate it effectively. So, you know, we're out on Board Game Geek. We have that tool for us at the register. Every register's got it. Our staff needs to be trained and encouraged to go out and learn about that. So if somebody comes in and says, hey, what's the next game after Puerto Rico in the series? We don't know. We go look, we find out, and then we share that information with the customer and, if appropriate, to other staff as well. It also extends to providing a supportive environment where our staff and our customers can learn. So that's why we do a lot of learn to play stuff. You know, if I had a nickel for every time I taught somebody how to play Pokemon, I could buy a good steak dinner pretty often. But it's important, and it's fun. I enjoyed it, but sometimes these lessons. I mean, Monday I spent 2 hours with a couple ladies teaching cribbage. I can teach cribbage in my sleep, but we still continue to do that. Along with that, we want to encourage our managers and our staff to be lifelong learners. It goes to our Bees Are Better program. If we got a staff member that is going to school, they're expected to have Bees Are Better. And we enforce that, because if they're not able and willing to learn in personal development, they aren't going to be good for the company as well. Any questions or comments there? Okay. One of the things that we struggle with how to say this is our authentic resolve. This goes with our unwavering commitment for purpose-driven integrity. It's candor in our communication. Pat, no, you can't do that. That's important. We have to be able to say that. Hey guys, I need you to go home, put on a clean, unwrinkled uniform. Don't come back to work with a wrinkled uniform. It can be tough. It can be really, really tough. But we have to be able to have that courage in how we handle tough situations, and just share our values, share what we do in the community, and be open with it. We're honest about it and transparent, even when it's difficult. The stuff that we did with the prismatic evolutions, we thought long and hard, how are we going to do that and still get the most prismatic evolutions out to the most people in the fairest way possible? And then we communicated it, and that was a hard thing. And overall, the community responded extremely positively to that when we communicated well. It's when we don't communicate well that we have problems, or when we actually don't make that decision in a timely manner.
So like for the Gundam thing, that's why we're working out that sign today and stuff like that, so we can communicate, this is how this event will go.
Right. And for example, that Gundam one, if I look at the amount of time I've spent on that in the last week versus what we're going to make in a profit on the initial beta, it's definitely not worth it, our time. But what we're doing is we're developing, we're going to do it right, darn it. And we're going to take the time to do it right. And when we do, we know down the road it'll pay off immeasurably, because not only will we do this one right, but then that sets that bar for those customers that this is how they're going to do it all the time, and we don't have the garbage that's going on.
It's don't get like the jerk with Union Arena who wanted to buy all the decks and just leave.
Right. And it's same with the Ravensburger Lorcana Store Championships. We went through this afternoon and reviewed very carefully how buys are supposed to work, because there's some manipulation of buys in the system by players. Well, no, I win a game, he wins a game, and then we're going to draw the last game. Well, that's not how an intentional draw works. An intentional draw is three or no wins, no losses, and 3 draws. That changes the algorithm inside the system and is not beneficial to the player the way a win, a loss, and a draw is. And that's extremely important. You have that on Saturday, don't you?
Sunday.
Or Sunday? Yeah. That's really important. And that's you'll have some people that don't understand that, or will say, no, that's not the way it is. And no, that's exactly the way it is. We're going to push the button right here on Melee, and it's going to go 003. And that's just the way it is. And, it's like we had a Yu-Gi-Oh player that told me we had a certain number of rounds in a Yu-Gi-Oh championship. And, there's no reason to get involved in an argument with them. We handle it professionally. And in that case, we just printed out the rules, set it on the table, and walked away. And that totally dissolved the entire situation.
When Yu-Gi-Oh sends out instructions for those kind of events, it actually gives you the round structure based on number of players. And it says underneath that table that this supersedes any other published round structure. So that's players arguing, and all Pat had to do was print that one page and put it on the table, because per Konami, that structure supersedes any other structure.
Our final core value is that we're resilient. Our resilience recognizes that we're going to make mistakes, but how we handle those mistakes and how we learn from them is what's going to make us better. We're constantly changing. The world is changing around us. 5 years ago, there wasn't COVID. We had to learn through COVID. Now there's not COVID. Well, no, there still is COVID, but there's not that situation that's out there, and we've got a totally different world situation that we need to deal with right now. And next week there'll be a different one. We need to learn from what's going on around us. There's new games coming, games going away, new people moving into the community, more stores, less stores, all sorts of things happen. And we need to learn from the mistakes and embrace that continuous improvement and say, hey, I don't know how to do this, or we don't know how to do this. Let's find somebody that does. We may have to pay to have somebody teach us. We have to pay to have somebody do it for us, but we learn from that and continually do that. And we bounce back from the bad things that happen. I'll never forget, I want to say this is probably the worst situation we ever had happen, and it was relatively new. We had just opened the Ridge Road store in 2004, and they had a festival called the Tall Ships Festival down in the waterfront in Green Bay. And we set up a tent there, and there was a game from WizKids, these little click-together ships that were there. And we were going to feature the ships right next to the Baltimore from the movies and all these big, beautiful, tall ships outdoors. And we set up down there, and it was a very successful event for us until Friday when a tornado came through. And it destroyed about $30,000 worth of wholesale product for us. Most of our tent was in the rigging of the Baltimore. And I had done my part earlier when we said we're going there. I called my insurance guy and I said, hey, are we going to be insured if we're down there? And I'm thinking if some kid falls on his face by the table or whatever. I'm not thinking tornado. And he said, yeah. That Monday he came in and said, I'm very sorry, Pat, but you weren't covered. On page 64 of this policy, you're not covered within 500 yards of a navigable waterway. Almost all of the product that was down, international navigable waterway. Almost all of the product that was down there was on consignment, which means we hadn't paid for it yet. And we had just moved into a new building. I don't even think we were operational yet. And so I'm looking at a $30,000 bill, which was a net 10 thing. I didn't have $30,000 in my pocket. And so what we did is, first of all, we said, okay, what are we going to do? And so I called the distributor and said, hey, this is what happened. What can we do? Well, that distributor was super cool. And because of how we had treated them at Gamma that year, they had actually flown us out for Gamma that year. They said, you have up to a year to pay that back. Don't worry about it. And then he said, what do you need to replace it? Which was cool. And then we fired our insurance agent. And we said, no more outdoor events. No, we did it one more year after that, but in a different way. But we learned from it and we moved on. And that's really, really important, that we bounce back from bad things that happen. And, no matter how bad it gets, there's always a way to improve from it. So anything else on that one, Jocelyn?
No, I sold that baton that was damaged years and years later from that event.
Yeah, that's true. I felt so bad for the lady that was next to us because she was a oil painting artist and she lost everything and she had no insurance.
Oh.
And I mean, she had a tent full of originals and prints and stuff. And yeah,
We now no longer, we will do outdoor events, but we will not do them overnight, and we have a weather clause.
yep. So those values all come together with our mission statement to let us know that Gnome Games is a lot more than just your normal grocery store for games or playing facility. We're not a card shop. We're a full community, and we've got the shared values that we share internally, externally, and a passion for what we do. From the philanthropy that gives us the motivation to continually look at how we do things to give back to the community to help it grow, to making sure that everybody's welcome at our tables. We always want to create those memories so that people think of Gnome Games first of mind. And they have the memories of, hey, I had this great game. Well, yeah, I got it from Gnome Games. While it's important there, I'm more worried about that, hey, I got a great game. I had fun with my kids at Thanksgiving, or my grandkids, or my grandma, or whoever at Thanksgiving. Or we've run events where people have actually come in early and said, hey, I want to propose to my girlfriend here because it was such a cool event. Those types of things are priceless. Yeah, you can't eat a piece of pie with them, but they're just as delicious. And those shared legacies are all shared because of our joy through gaming. And it's super, super important as a manager that your staff understands these values, that you take the time to look at how they're doing things and explain, hey, that was a pretty bad thing today. You forgot to lock up last night. And you're going to bounce back from it. As long as you don't do it again, now we're going to remember to do that. And going forward, they're going to be better because we allow them to bounce back. And we're going to have that spirit of the game, being fair in everything that we do. When you decide to schedule, if you've got two people that are both equally, you want to give them about the same amount of hours. You don't want to give your best friend 30 hours and the other guy 10 hours. You want them both to have about 20 hours if it matches the schedules. Now there's the business acumen side of it that goes along there. We also want to encourage and make sure that our staff are learning about things. Like you right now, you're taking the class. That's really great. That's really good. But a year from now, I'm going to look at John Luke and say, John Luke, what are you doing now? What's the last book that you read? What's the last podcast you listen to? There's things like that we want to follow. And when we have somebody that's not developing, that's stagnated, we have to have that conversation and say, hey, I'd really like you to learn a little bit about this, and encourage them to learn. And eventually some folks just kind of peter off, and usually we have to have a conversation with them. It's a very difficult conversation to say, hey, you're not growing with Gnome Games. Usually their performance fails as well during that process, and then we have to come to some level of agreement on what they really want out of life. Some people just want to be couch potatoes. That's cool. You can still go to heaven and be a couch potato, but you're not going to be paid by Gnome Games to be a couch potato. So those are the things about our value that are extremely important for us as senior leadership, Jocelyn and Paul and I, to share with you, but also to have you comprehend and share with your staff. Most major companies will have something like this. They may not get as involved in it as we do. McDonald's is probably not going to have those same level of information sharing down to the burger flipper, fry dipper guy. But our goal is to have everybody thinking and acting based on these principles. Cool? Any questions? You got these memorized, right?
I've been taking notes.
Okay.
You should see his handwriting. It looks like Elvish from Lord of the Rings.
Well, that's cool. As long as he can read it, I guess that's all that counts, right? Okay. We will do another class tomorrow. What are we doing tomorrow? I forgot. Sorry, apologize.
Your note, I believe, said stuff about tasking and.
Yes, it will be tasking and communicating those tasks to the daily tasking and follow up with your staff. Yes, that's what it
Is that
is.
a me? Or
That's a
is
you. That we'll do it together, but you. I want to cover tasking inside currently on Messenger and Facebook groups, but then I think I'll have screenshots of Discord as well. Okay.
yeah, I'm just making a note.
Yep.
So I can get my notes together.
Yep. And then John Luke, the missions and values are actually published to the staff Facebook or staff page. They are not hidden by password. I moved it so it's visible on the top menu
So those on the where?
on the staff.gnomegames.com.
Cool.
Okay. Let me pause that.